Hey, what's up, everyone? It's me, Robert. So I'm just doing a kind of random vlog about some of the insight I've had from living in Japan for the time that I have lived here, and I just wanted to share some of it with you. Lately, I've been thinking about what I'm going to be doing in my future and whether I'll be staying in Japan long term or whether I'll be going back to America or whether I'll go someplace else. Um, so things I've been thinking about, I have been really considering trying to get. Well, I've already signed up to do the Japanese language proficiency test for the level two, the Nikyu, as they would say in Japanese. And I'm thinking about doing this primarily because I'm thinking about what I'm going to do long term. And when I first got into starting learning Japanese, I was really kind of young and naive. I was in my early 20s. And I wanted to work for a game company. And I really thought that would be an awesome job to have. And over the years, I've realized that it's a really, really difficult job to get. And so I'm still considering whether or not I'm going to be doing that or what I will be doing in the future. And so, um, basically, I'm trying to get to the point where I can use my Japanese more as a tool and not just something I use in my day-to-day life to get by, and I can actually make a living out off of. And so to be able to do that, there's really only two routes to do it. There's the JLPT, which basically you can either get, NICU or EQ, the second grade or first grade. And those are the things that are actually going to get you jobs in Japan, and very entry-level jobs at that. Um, and why I think that is I've been looking at online job stuff for, the, almost the entire time I've been in Japan, because I'm not the kind of person who will just stay at a job because it's a job. I want to move on to bigger and better things when I have the chance. And so, well, after looking through, hundreds and hundreds of job listings, I would say the bare minimum you need to get a job where you're actually using Japanese is the level 2 for the JLPT. And a lot of people say level 1 is strongly preferred. And so that's really, really hard to get to level 1, especially as a native English speaker. I think in some respects, especially kanji, I think Chinese people have a leg up on us Americans who are not used to using a pictographic language. And so they'll get really good at kanji, but I think at the same time, I think Americans get really good at conversation. But in terms of a job, having a bigger kanji vocabulary base, knowing more kanji is more useful. So it's a mixed bag, especially because there are lots of trade scenarios with China and Japan, but I would say that stuff that I'm more interested in doing would have to be with kind of I would mainly say game and technology related things I would be interested in translating with, and so that's what I've been working on. That's what I've been trying to achieve long term, and I'm not there yet. And so I recently was just watching a whole bunch of documentaries about game programmers and like startup companies in the early 90s, and I was just really inspired by a lot of these people who became extremely successful, and they did it all on their own with small companies and little offices and stuff like that. And it really inspired me to get back on track to do what I want to do, and that's really work in the game industry. And we'll see how that goes. But I mean, I have only about 2 friends out of I had a graduating class of about 30 people who studied Japanese with me, and most of them are just doing random jobs. There's a few of us who are here teaching English like I'm doing right now. But only two of them have really gotten to the level that they're actually working in jobs where they're translating and working with companies, game companies. It's really funny. I guess it's a popular job for people who are Japanese majors. But that brings me to another topic. And so if you want to learn Japanese, sure, you can take college classes, and that's great. But I would say, unless you're at a really prestigious university, the level of Japanese you're going to get to in college is not going to be at a level to get you to a good job in Japan. I'm just being frank about that. You're going to have to do more work on your own. And so, of course, you could do that living in another country, and I honestly think that it's a really big possibility that a lot of people kind of just don't consider. Like, you could study and get to a level of Japanese that is really high just on your own, living wherever you live. And I've met plenty of people like that. And so don't think that living in another country means that you can't get really good at Japanese, because you can. You might not have the best conversational skills because you don't have a lot of chances to practice it. But what I will say is that you need to form habits. And one of the best habits, I would say, is to be a person who reads on a very regular basis, every day, most likely. And so I think that habit is going to be, in long term, more beneficial than having good conversational skills. Being able to read and decipher stuff quickly is going to be more and more important. So getting in a habit of using written and Japanese is really going to be more important than conversational stuff, because when it comes down to most careers, when you're using Japanese, it's going to come down to the written language and not so much conversation. I don't know many people who become, foreign TV stars in Japan. The vast majority of people who get really good at Japanese do two things. They either work for a trade company, or they do translation or localization, which is basically the same thing, just a little bit different of a branch. So, if you want to get really good at Japanese, you can do it in another country, or you can come here. And of course, you're going to be surrounded by it all day, and that's going to help you improve. And so, but really what I want to say is that, let's see, don't think about limits of what you can do with your own confidence. Think about what you can do wherever you are. And if you are in Japan, then I think one of the things that a lot of people fail to grasp while they're here is that they put their heads in textbooks and just read all the time out of textbooks and stuff like that. Yet they're surrounded by letters they get in the mail, memos they get at their office, and they read some of it, but in my case I don't read all of it, but I'm trying to break that habit. I'm trying to use my Japanese as much as possible in that environment. And so, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm kind of rambling at this point. But really what I wanted to say is that if you want to learn Japanese and you want to make a career out of it, it's not going to be the easiest thing to do, and it's not going to be the best paying thing to do either, if that's your only skill is speaking Japanese and whatever your language is. Being trilingual, perhaps Korean, Japanese, and English, you might have even more possibilities, but I don't think that much more, honestly, unfortunately. And so what that leads me to get into my next topic is like what I've been thinking about doing in the future, and it's kind of sad and pathetic if you want to say it, but I used to be really good with computers. I used to. This is in the late 90s, early 2000s. I could build computers and I could do basic DOS and stuff like that, and really simple programming. But then I graduated high school, and I was doing that in high school, and I never did it again. And a lot of the things that I see that are really good paying jobs in Japan are stuff that are like IT, and graphic user interface engineers, C++, Java, and all these programming languages, and being bilingual. These jobs pay tons, and not ridiculous, but I would say like 33, maybe 40% more than just an average bilingual job. So, you're going from making about $60,000 here to $80,000 to sometimes up to $100,000 a year, which is a big difference. And especially because you're going to be winding up getting that much more experience, and it's just going to push you into bigger and better careers. However, I would say that the idea of being just a solo translator, unless you are 100% dedicated to that and you want to work at it every single day, it's going to be really difficult. And so just keep that in mind when you're considering, I want to learn Japanese, because it's a cool language to learn. I had a really good time learning it, and I'm still learning it, and I'm 32. I know I look older, but just keep in mind that it's not an easy road. So I just wanted to babble about that, just some of my thoughts I've had in the last week or so, because I had this really big, what's the word I'm looking for? Revelation, so to speak, about what I want to do. And I kind of had this, how shall I say? Once again, I'll use the word revelation, epiphany, if you will, that I don't have infinite time here on this planet, and if I want to do something, I should do it now. And so that's led me to get to the point where I want to go into a career that I'm actually interested in, and I've always wanted to work in the game industry, and so I'm going to try to get as much experience as I can, and I'm hoping in the next year I can switch from teaching and go into some form of translation. Now, at this point, I have virtually no experience. I have a little, but I mean, on paper, like zero. And so my best hope of getting a job would be like contract by line, which means you're translating line by line and getting paid by the line. You're getting paid by each sentence. And that's really hard. It's really hard to make a living doing that. Some people call it being a freelancer, and sure, that's cool, but it's actually extremely difficult. And so that leads me into like talking about either doing freelancing or working for a small company, because the one thing that a lot of people don't realize about gaming is that mobile gaming is huge in Japan. I mean, I'm sure many years ago in Japan you'd see people on the trains playing, DS or PS Vita, and you still see that, but I would say the vast majority of people that are into gaming in Japan do it on their cell phones, and they're trying to take those games and spread them around the world. And there's tons of companies that are doing great here in Japan but haven't branched out into other sections of the world, and I think that's just a matter of time. I was watching a really interesting story about the initial reception of RPGs in the USA, and they were talking about the Final Fantasy series. And what was really interesting was this guy, I forget his name, but he had a master's in Japanese literature, and he started working for Square. And he looked at some of the original translations for these Final Fantasy titles. I believe Final Fantasy IV was the one that he first started working on, which when it was originally released, it was translated by a Japanese guy who spoke some English, and he said it was just pretty much rubbish and had to start again from scratch on that. But that opened up a whole giant marketplace to these companies. And I think that you need to be really proactive if you want to do anything like that. You have to, one, realize your weaknesses as a bilingual person, realize what you should get better at. Two, always be searching, always look for any opportunity, because even a small opportunity is a stepping stone. And so people who work at a small gaming company or a small trade company, even so, that's a step into doing something more they want to do, because experience is key. Because really, when it comes down to getting better jobs, people really care about how much experience you have. So even if you're doing some stuff for free at first, it's better than having no experience. So keep that in mind. And other than that, think about your long-term goals. And if, busting your ass to translate line by line is something that you're not willing to do at first, you might want to reconsider what you're doing. So this is just, kind of a long vlog talking about some of my thoughts and what I'm planning to do in the future. But I think it might have been interesting just because I wanted to give some perspective to people who are considering learning Japanese or in the middle of learning Japanese and they want to improve what they're doing. So thanks for watching. I know this got pretty long. All right, so have a good night. Take it easy, guys.